Ever wondered how banks are adapting to the lightning-fast pace of technological change? In episode 2 of this season of Zafin Banking Blueprints, our host Dharmesh Mistry explores the fascinating world of banking system modernization with Hans Tesselaar, Executive Director at BIAN, and John Mason, SVP Customer Innovations at Zafin. They discuss how BIAN is leading the charge in solving banks' integration challenges through standardized APIs and architectural models, and delve into the radical concept of a coreless bank, a future where banks operate without monolithic core systems. Join us for a closer look into the world of low-code environments and learn how this technology is shaping the future of banking.
Welcome, everybody, to the second series of Zafin's Core Modernization podcast. This week's special guests are Hans Tesselaar from BIAN and John Mason from Zafin. Welcome, guys. How are you today?
Good. We are fine. At least I'm fine.
Great. Look, Hans, would you mind first taking, an introduction of yourself and just for those people that don't know BIAN, just a bit of an intro to BIAN as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Dharmesh. Good to see you again, John. So my name is Hans Tesselaar. I'm the Executive Director of BIAN, and BIAN stands for Banking Industry Architecture Network. So BIAN started in 2008. We are a not-for-profit association, and our mission statement is to solve the integration issues for the bank. So we started in 2008 with application-to-application integration. Then we moved outside the bank. So we do have a very extensive API portal, 249 pre-built APIs, Swag and microservices code. And we launched several years ago, in partnership with Zafin, what we call our Coreless Bank initiative. And we will move to the Coreless Bank a little bit later. So BIAN, we do have around 100 members from all around the globe. We have financial institutions, software providers, integrators, academics, consultancies, and so on and so forth. So that's the ecosystem. And in the ecosystem, we create the materials that we make available for the industry.
Fantastic. We're going to delve into a bit more detail behind that because that definitely sounds interesting. Yep. John, would you like to introduce yourself and your role within Zafin?
Absolutely, yeah. So John Mason, I've been with Zafin now around 11 to 12 years. My current role is Senior Vice President for an area which we refer to as customer engineering. And again, the kind of idea behind customer engineering is around how do we help, how do we educate our customers in, number one, adopting Zafin, which is a suite of products to support core modernization, but how to do it in a more strategic way using industry, best practice kind of concepts such as BIAN. And again, we'll come on to more of that a little bit later on.
Fantastic. And just so that the audience gets to know you personally a little bit better, Hans, would you mind with a little intro about yourself and your role within BIAN?
Yeah, so in my role in BIAN, I'm the executive director. That means I run, on a day-to-day basis, the business. So that is from new member acquisition, PR interviews, podcasts, you name it, just to make sure that we serve our members as they expect out of the membership. So that is my role. Before I stepped in this role, I was with ING Bank. I was Director of IT Innovation and Strategy. So it is a long way back into the banking IT environment from an architecture perspective primarily, and innovation perspective. So the BIAN organization is governed by a BIAN Board of Directors. So 4 times a year we have a BIAN board meeting, and I then report back to the board what we achieved, how we spent the budget, and so on and so forth. So I'm more or less the day-to-day person to make sure that everybody does what the members expect that we are doing.
Fantastic. And I think you briefly mentioned this word coreless, and my background is I've worked in core banking, and I like yourself, I've also worked in a bank, and they always have a core. So what is it you mean by coreless banking?
Yeah, so when we thought about it several years ago, we had the idea that it maybe one moment in time it should be possible to run a bank without a core system, as we know it today. And we all know the DXCs and the Fiservs and Temenos, you name it. And there is a lot of in those systems that is not specific to what we would call core, like you see with, for instance, Thought Machine, the thin ledger type of thing. But we, maybe dreaming a little bit too much to say maybe one moment in time when we are capable of defining and building self-orchestrating microservices, or microservices, call a microservice, he knows who calls, then he knows what to do, and so on and so forth. Well, okay, keep dreaming, but that was the underlying idea. So that then we came up with the word coreless, and the word coreless, like it does with you, Damis, triggers people. They always want to know what it is, and then we explain, okay, it's a sort of, we are almost there, but not. So that is, so it's a good buzzword. And we now built 4, we're in the process of building number 4, but we have built 3 iterations of the BIAN bank based on the coreless principle, but in essence today is a best of breed environment where integration is the key topic. So that is where we are. We have 3 in place. We are working on number 4, and I think we will touch later on number 3 and number 4. But that is more or less as a proof point, as a proof of concept to demonstrate to the industry this is feasible today. So you don't have to wait until whatever 2030. Today you can start moving in this sort of coreless direction. At least you get less independent of your core vendor.
Yeah, I mean, I like the definition, and it does highlight some of the confusion in the marketplace, which generally is created, I hate to say it, by the vendors themselves, but it's based around their products as opposed to a kind of industry standard definition. But I do like this thing that the core is essentially the ledger, but there's so much other software that is required to run the bank, right? That is actually just as important. And so the BIAN kind of remit is to help interoperability of the software to run your bank in essence, right? And coreless kind of highlights.
Yeah, so that's true. So there are a lot of, as you mentioned, additional software besides the ledger that is needed to run a bank. But if you can decouple those from the ledger, then you give the banks the opportunity to go to the best of breed. So what is my best KYC solution on the market? How do I link it to my core? What is the best product and pricing? How do I link it to the core? So it gives the banks the opportunity to pick and choose like the Lego blocks and create a bank with the state-of-the-art software and not being dependent of only one vendor.
Great. I mean, maybe I'll switch to John now and just ask John. John, how does Zafin play a role in coreless banking? Like, you're not a core provider, right?
Correct. Yeah, not yet. It's a question everybody asks us. So we're focused on core modernization. So what that really means is we provide a number of methods and mechanisms and software solutions to externalize what banks typically would build into a monolithic core platform. So if you look at what they've done, whether they've got 1, whether they've got 5, depending on the line of business and or product line that they're supporting, what we try to do is help people understand that you can externalize so much of this. So basically you unlock the capabilities of the organization. Because when you start building on these monolithic platforms, you get incremental changes, so expensive. And obviously the interoperability, the amount of translation of data and information going around, and is data really up to date? Is it T+0, 1, 5, even worse in some organizations when you go from retail towards corporate banking. So what we do is, we used to have a Zafin language for externalization of these capabilities. So as Hans mentioned, whether it's product, whether it's pricing for fees, pricing for rates, if it's conditional evaluation of a relationship-based pricing structure, we can externalize that from core. But there was also, we now have to translate between the bank and Zafin. And if we bring in another solution, whether it's channel-based solution, KYC solution, we then have to talk to them. So, we started looking at how can we, obviously there's nothing complete and solves everything 100%. But how can we find something which would accelerate the conversations and provide a forward-looking framework from a banking perspective? That's very important. We need something which is banking specific and not grown from another industry, whether it's telco, healthcare, or whatever, where people go, you can fit stuff into this. So, we started looking at this, quite a few years ago with Hans, and a couple of complementary clients that we have. And we started to look at how do we, redesign, re-implement, and or adopt BIAN concepts for Zafin. And again, that allows us to now integrate with clients at pace if they're on the BIAN journey. But if they're not necessarily on the BIAN journey already, it gives them a really good starting place to start to modernize, start to evolve their infrastructure from a standards-based approach. And again, as we'll come on to a bit later on, we really are looking at real-world scenarios now. We're moving away from, a lot of people think, on the first look at BIAN, it's very academic, it's very semantic, and that's by design. But now we're actually going down through the processes, working with other vendors, other banks, to actually work out how to really implement real-world scenarios. And this is one of the, I think, the big successes we've had in the last 2 to 3 years with the proof of concepts. Is really turning this into something tangible that somebody from a bank or somebody from a product company can look at and go, I understand what this means now, as opposed to, how do I apply BIAN? I've never done this before. Nobody's done this before. So, that's what, Zafin's doing. And again, we've launched, BIAN compliant, BIAN certified, and BIAN inspired, all various flavors of BIAN implementable services over the last 2 years. And again, as part of our core product roadmap now. So again, last year we won, Partner of the Year for, the work that we did with Wells Fargo, for example. We've accelerated their core modernization journey by leveraging BIAN, not just from an academical perspective, but from an implementation perspective as well. And again, we're seeing this, reproduced across each one of our new clients, and it's a hot topic for every prospect at the moment.
Fantastic. I mean, we'll definitely delve more into that case, that example a bit later on. But first, I want to switch back to Hans and just ask. So, what I understand from John is that you've got this kind of common language, be it for the services or for data, across banking. I think that is the first imperative step that is required to enable interoperability. But what else is BIAN doing specifically, I guess, or is within the BIAN framework that helps banks to modernize their core or their infrastructure?
Yeah, so what you see is that when we started in 2008, there was no let's say, publicly available bank on the page. There were proprietary models, but it was not something that was open for everyone. So we started by identifying all the business functions that should be in a bank that does everything for everybody. That is our framework. And when we identified those, then the question is, how do they work together? So what is the information dependencies between all those different elemental business functions? So we started by defining sample process definition, how to onboard the customer, how to initiate a loan, and then what are the functions that are involved and what is the information that flows. So that gives the bank an opportunity to look at their own situation and ask themselves the question, which of those functions are we performing and which are we not? And if you know what it is, you can create your own bank on the page, maybe together with the partner, maybe together with the consultancy partner. So this is what we do, nothing less and nothing more. And when you have that in place, then you go, and it's easy to use the Zafin example. You said, well, we are in need in a product and pricing solution. You don't know what it is, but that's something you think that you want. So you do an RFI, RFP, and you send it out to whatever X vendors. They all have their own definition of product and pricing. You have your own definition of product and pricing. By using the BIAN landscape, you create a common language. This is what product and pricing is. You tick the box, and if you have additional functions, why and can we use them? So it's not something, if it's not in the box, you're out, but it creates a common language. And one of my board members always say, it's a stone of Rosetta. You can translate the different worlds into one word. So, and one of the things we did in the core proof of concept number 2 is create a tool to combine all those different languages, because each vendor has his own data schema, his own definitions, and how do you combine this and how do you create one common language? So that was the result of POC2. So creating the common language, creating the bank on a page as a discussion piece within the bank. Is this who we are? Is this what we do? And then you go outside to your potential partners and can you provide me this game? And how does it integrate? So that is the strength of the model.
I like it. In my head, just to kind of almost simplify this for, if I had to explain it to my wife, then I can see that BIAN is almost like the blueprint of a Lego model, and it's defined what the connecting bricks could be like, but you don't provide any of the bricks that comes from the different third parties, but they will fit together if they use the same, standards that you've kind of defined. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So that's why we hope to say, okay, if we have BIAN aligned solution or BIAN approved solution, that at the end, when that's in place, we can help the banks to come to a sort of plug and play environment. Yeah, so nobody worries when he downloads an app on his iPhone, does it work? No, it works. So that should be the same, and it should be, let's say, the bank on the phone, and they say, okay, I add an additional function, and the integration is standardized, so I don't have to worry about the integration. That is the ultimate goal.
Fantastic. And so both of you have kind of mentioned POCs that you've been working on. John, do you want to kind of expand a bit more on the work that you've been doing with BIAN?
Yeah, so we've participated in all of the POCs. POC 1 all the way through to the current in-flight proof of concept 4, which we'll talk on very briefly. We're not going to spoil too much. Ready for when we announce it later in the year. So what we've done is, again, there's been a number of things that we've been trying to solve with the proof of concept. Number one, are the BIAN kind of concepts and artifacts fit for purpose? So again, we iterate through, and again, I'll use some of the internal language like service domains, service landscapes. We iterate through those to see if they're fit for purpose for what we know from a banking perspective. The second thing is that we also work out, how do people use these? How do people actually adopt it? What tooling do we need? Because again, having an API specification or having a business object model in a data format, is all very well and good, but contextually it's really hard to understand what you're supposed to do with it. So we iterate through, and again, it's not just us. There's quite a few partners and bank participation in this now. As Hans said, there's over 100, and it grows day by day. So we look at that, and we actually set some of our objectives to be, what can we learn? How do we accelerate the adoption of BIAN? The third part, which is typically the shortest part of any proof of concept, is we actually implement, a given use case. So after we've gone through all the making sure it's fit for purpose, make sure everybody understands it, we know how to use tooling to get API specifications being generated automatically. How do we enhance, business object models? We then typically go through a very fast, 4 or 5 week build phase where we actually implement end-to-end solutions. Proof of concept 1 and 2 are relatively straightforward because just due to the use case. Proof of concept 3 really kind of stepped forward from a standards perspective where with HSBC being the lead banking partner, we decided to look at open banking. Again, one thing that we want to do within BIAN is leverage other standards. Not compete, not kind of try to disrupt. We try to leverage them where possible. So we went through the arduous task of mapping the open banking specification, typically led by the UK European kind of one. It's most familiar for us. But we looked at that and modeled it within BIAN. So we now have a BIAN specific implementation to show how people can do that. And the use cases, we implemented a number of use cases around that about consuming external product information, which is typically a very difficult task for a bank. But then what can you do with it? Okay, which kind of set up proof of concept for. So we did use cases about how do we do product matching, how do we do next product recommendations based on the totality of a banking relationship with a customer. So and again, because we have the BIAN model, it's a composable model. We've defined how you can implement these orchestrated processes, whereas typically somebody would just build it in one application for one use case, not very reusable, not very maintainable for the future. And Hans will talk about that a bit later on as one of the key objectives of BIAN this year. Proof of concept 4. Unsurprisingly, is going down the route of, right, we've done that. We've done a kind of systematic stroke parametric kind of evaluation of data. How do we now bring in machine learning and AI? Okay, how do we bring that into the BIAN kind of concepts? So that has implications across a number of disciplines within BIAN. So the traditional is the model fit for purpose. It's a big focus for our information architecture group now, because again, how do you define sharing of information between machine learning models? It's a very bespoke and kind of almost it is a scientific process, but it's also artistic, because again, you don't really know what data you will be looking at. You can't just define a set of columns and say that's what BIAN refers to as an ML model. We can't do that. So we're going through a number of iterations to work out how we can bring in some kind of dynamic concepts for exchange of information across these capabilities. And then how do we plug in the wonderful AI, generative AI, for example, for product recommendations, pricing recommendations, price optimization from a relationship manager perspective, stroke point of communication with the client. But we're also bringing in the same set of tools, but on top of the BIAN information stack. So at the moment, it's a very it's not that difficult. You can do training within a week, to understand the whole kind of concept and navigate things. But we're bringing in the generative AI, so you can start talking to it, saying, I would like to orchestrate a process to do product recommendations for this. And it will now go through and show you the appropriate service domains and retrieve documentation from proof of concept 4, for example. You don't have to navigate thousands and thousands of pages of information. So again, we're bringing it in both sides. How do we assist banks in orchestrating these processes? And how do we actually improve our own lives using BIAN to generate these scenarios out of the box?
And is this actually, obviously it's not production, but this is actually integrating with a bank's real software? They're like, whether they're legacy systems or some older third-party systems that they bought.
Yeah, there's a couple of non-functional.
So it's not just working on your own with a bank, but only on your platform. It's working with their platforms, real life, showing, the exchange of data, etc.
Absolutely, yeah. So we exclude a couple of non-functional things, just for expediting the proof of concepts. But for the last 3 proof of concepts, we have deployed on a hybrid cloud capability with secure communications using both APIs, file data exchange, and also event-based communications. And again, that's only possible by defining, the BIAN, object models, defining what data is exchanged, and people understanding like, okay, this is who I can talk to, this is what I can publish a message, but other people need to subscribe to it. So it's really, really nice. And that's why I said we spend several months looking at the business problem and then a very short period of time implementing it, because it's just so good.
That's fantastic. And Hans, how do you, like, obviously Zafin, wants to show that they've got a great component for BIAN in the product pricing space, but how do you make sure that, the POC ends up with something that is independent, not specific to Zafin, and also, that banks or other members can experience or learn from the POC without having to take part?
Yeah. So first of all, what we do, we are, let's call it picking the brains of the participants. So Zafin has that expertise on product and pricing modeling and predictive and so on and so forth. But so we are taking advantage of their knowledge, let's say translate that into BIAN, and say, okay, this is how you can run it using the BIAN artifacts. I hate the word artifacts, but okay, I have a better word. So it is not that we are implementing a Zafin solution. It's not that we're implementing an IBM solution of whatever, of TCS, or we did with Thought Machine. So there were maybe 20, 30 over the proof of concept partners involved, all with their knowledge. Some say, okay, let's link to my system just to demonstrate that we can use that the proof of concept runs in a mainframe environment, in an Azure environment, in an AWS environment. So then we asked the participating partners to make a sandbox environment of their solution available so that we can demonstrate how it works. So it is a BIAN solution using the knowledge of all the different participants. So if we're discussing POC 3 that was run by HSBC, they have the project management and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of HSBC knowledge in it, but the intent is that also Citibank can use it. So it's HSBC knowledge, and then more or less making into a sort of general scope that everybody can, because what we as BIAN need to provide is that we make something available that can be used in every region by every bank, despite the size or the location. And because if otherwise it doesn't make sense from a standards point. So and then in the POC3 we used the HSBC sandbox environment. So you're asking, are you now linking to a real bank? Of course, we are not allowed to connect with the real live data from the customers. That is a no-go area. So we have a sandbox environment. So now POC4 Wells Fargo is in the lead. So we're using the Wells Fargo environment. And so we always try to find a real life situation with a real life sandbox, maybe strange word, but that's what we do to demonstrate that it works. And that is the underlying. And what we did, because John went a little bit fast about POC3, but what we did in POC3 is that we say, okay, we have the BIAN bank, and then we have a new customer, and then we ask that new customer, do you have an account at another bank, at an existing bank? And in our case, the answer is yes, and the existing bank was HSBC. So then we asked, okay, can you give us consent that we retrieve data from your HSBC account, all within the regulations set up by the open banking authorities in the EU and the UK. And when she approved, we retrieved that data. We analyze that data, and then we say, okay, looking at your data from HSBC, and we can make you a better offer. We see that you have a loan for whatever percentage, and looking at your history and all the data that we have, we think we can make you a better offer. So that was, let's say, the ultimate use of open banking options available for everybody, but today only used by the aggregators and not yet by the banks. But the bank can do the same as the aggregator does. but we show them how it could be done. So that, I think that's answers some of your questions, Damis. So we are using an environment of a bank.
I mean, what I've learned from that session, that bit there, is that this is not an independent group of people working in theory about to create some standards, but you're actually collaborating, learning, working together. That's both banks and vendors to create the standard. Secondly, that you're using the POCs to prove that the standards actually work in practical environments, which are a mixture of legacy and new software, etc. Right? It's not vendor specific.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fantastic way to. I don't know why all standards aren't created this way. This is the way it should be.
Yeah, well, I think so. When you look at this at the tradition, let's call it traditional standards body, and we were also for a long time a traditional standard body. We are very good in providing PDFs and PowerPoints, and PDFs and PowerPoints always work. That's the good news. So there is no issue. So when we moved into APIs, and more or less encouraged, let's call it positively by Forrester. So we're creating APIs. And for the first time ever, we had digital assets. And when we had those digital assets available for the whole industry, all those APIs, they said, what can we do more? And then we said, okay, let's try to use those APIs again inside the bank to solve the integration issues. And that's how we started with the POCs. So for us, it was also a learning process. And moving away from PowerPoint was scary, because we were not used to it. We didn't have the right resources and so on and so forth. So it was a journey, and the journey works out very well.
Great. Look, we are kind of running out of time, but I have a really important question as well for both of you. And that is, technology is one of those things that evolves all the time, right? How is it that you guys can future-proof the bank with what they're doing today? Because we know that something around the corner is going to be new, and whatever you've done in the past is now even if you implemented something last year, it's now old because something new has come along. So how are you future-proofing banks with what you're doing within the standards and adoption of the standards?
Okay.
Who wants to go first?
I will go first. So first of all, what we do, we try to use as much as possible open stuff that is available. So we keep away from proprietary stuff. So everything that is open, that we can use open source tooling and so. What you also see that we all know that in any way or form, cloud is the future. If it's proprietary cloud or public cloud, whatever. So cloud-based is also the future. And we help the industry to become future-proof, to make sure that if they migrate to a plug-and-play environment, the things that we are not aware of that are maybe around the corner next month can be easily plugged into your existing environment. Instead, when you have a huge monolithic system, there is no plug-and-play. So if you start decomposing your current core into smaller bits and pieces, that gives you already a germ start to become future-proof.
Fantastic. Anything from you to add, John?
Yeah. So just to reiterate, what Hans has said and the whole kind of concept about BIAN. Yeah. To make things future-proof, you have to go down a composable, application route. Yeah. Composable services, composable implementation. Yeah. As you said earlier on, the proof of concepts, we talked to both legacy and new. So again, if you actually talk the right language, you should be able to plug and play, swap in and swap out. Because again, it may not be that the technology is out of date. It's the implementation may be out of date. We're looking at machine learning and AI. It's not really going to change. It's just what you do with it is going to be important. So if you implement the appropriate granularity, where you can get the benefit of orchestrating these new things. So because again, it's like, we've looked at large language models. Now everybody's looking at how do you chain multiple large language models in specific industries? How do you keep human in the loop, all that kind of stuff? It's only if you actually build these composable frameworks, using a common language, you can improve them, you can extend them, you can replace them. Because again, it's like, one of the key things that we're doing with Zafin's integration and orchestration platform is helping banks bridge to the future. And again, BIAN is the way to do that. We don't introduce any proprietary translation kind of between Zafin and bank. It's like BIAN. So some clients we're forcing to go down the BIAN route, but it's for their benefit, as we move forward. So if everybody keeps doing proprietary, monolithic, one use case scenario, it's not going to work.
So I'm just going to summarize what I think I've heard, and you can agree or not. But what BIAN achieves is basically it breaks down the entire bank into a common set of functions, and it uses a common language. And what I've learned, one of the things I learned today, is that this language is common across whatever geography. Because I heard that Wells Fargo was part of it, and then HSBC were part of it, etc. And in the past, my understanding was that BIAN was kind of European-centric, but this is good. So it is a common framework. And then by breaking these down into separate small pieces with a common language, we now have the ability to compose or add in or swap out pieces as we wish. And that, in effect, helps us to future-proof the bank as well. So not only are we getting flexibility, the ability to bring in new capabilities, but we're also future-proofing the bank by doing that. I mean, what a wonderful project to be part of. I thank you very much for explaining that to me. I've learned a lot, and it was really insightful. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you also very much.